Welcome to another episode of MYD Global. I'm your host, Leanne Hackman-Carty. It's no secret that the more money you put into mitigation will help you on the response and recovery side. I'm talking to Richard Seline today. He's the co-founder of the Resilience Innovation Hub about the work that they're doing to help foster more mitigation focus, dollars, and investments prior to disasters. So stay tuned as I talk to Richard about the hub and what they're trying to achieve. Hi, Richard. How are you today?
I am wonderful. Excited to be getting an opportunity to spend some time with you. Thank you for including me.
Oh, well, my pleasure. So, what I wanted to ask you about first, actually, before we get onto the topic, but just a little bit about yourself, your background.
Well, I always tell folks that I have a government and English degree from the University of Texas, which qualifies me to be the mayor of nothing. So I get to ask a lot of really stupid questions, so to speak. I'm naturally an inquisitive person, but um, I'm a fourth generation Texan who spent 27 years up in Washington, D.C., running a couple federal agencies, part of the Bush 41, now deceased George Herbert Walker Bush White House, and then got very involved in economic development and technology strategies. Owned a company based out of Washington, D.C. that did over 180 different engagements around the world. And suddenly got a phone call from the former governor here in Texas. We moved back to Texas about 5 years ago, but I got a phone call because the state had been in this drought of record, and he wanted to find out what else the state could be doing to invest in solutions around water and water technology. Well, if you think about it, when you don't have enough water is suddenly when water becomes really valuable, right? The other end of the extreme is when you have too much water, it becomes a liability. So a state as big as Texas is almost evenly divided between the western state seems to be in and out of drought all the time, and the eastern part of the state is in and out of storms and storm surge. So we set up a nonprofit, not a charity, but a nonprofit neutral, entity to establish a way to look at all of the different infrastructure and operations, both public and private, around water. And then obviously you go through 4 major floods and then a hurricane, the lightning bolt goes off that, wait a minute, we need to be doing something more than just what we've been doing. So my background in doing technology and economic development and putting together some pretty interesting investment strategies. I'm the crazy guy that put the CIA's venture fund together. I've worked with 11 different governors putting their venture funds together. So it gave me an opportunity to really then move into this resilience space.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to ask you about. I see that you've this Resilience Innovation Hub.
Yep.
Can you tell me what it is, what the mandate is, how it's funded, that kind of stuff?
If you think about that, all of the states, the provinces, and wherever, we now know that there are persistent disasters. So I don't want to get into the climate, I mean, that's never an easy debate. But the fact is that we now know that we're going through these persistent, droughts and floods and storms and fires and spills and leaks. Well, when you lose $1 trillion on the US Gulf Coast alone, the insurance industry starts thinking about, wait a minute, we got to, look at our losses and try to mitigate our losses. Well, that's very parallel to the same thing that the federal government is looking at. So about 2 years ago, coming up on 3, matter of fact, we realized that this issue of resilience which is an overused phrase like sustainability and green. But this issue of resilience, the way we're defining it is pre-disaster risk mitigation. It's so obvious that if you spend more money on the front side to prevent the future losses, the return on investment is, off the charts. But it's been talked about, it's kind of been moved. So we have partnered with the Insurance Information Institute, which is really like a think tank and a do tank for the national and global insurance and reinsurance sector, who is making their own kind of pivot and transformation around this idea of pre-disaster risk mitigation investing. So our belief was that there was a need to create a innovation hub, which is really a network that we're connecting the dots across the country to some similar endeavors that have been put in place. There's one in Hartford, Connecticut. Why? Well, that's where the Hartford insurance is based, right? Yeah. You've got one in Cambridge, Mass, between Harvard and MIT, because you've got some really smart people looking at these issues. The decision was to put it in Houston, put the flagship of the Innovation Hub in Houston, because sad but true, it happens to be a place where there's been a lot of disasters and a lot of losses, right? And the mandate is very simple. Identify the best next generation of technology, equipment, products, experts, and align them with this type of investing in resilience, whether it's insurance or non-insurance type of investing. And like other, areas of innovation, what you also find out is that there's been a lot of existing technologies and solutions from around the world that can be brought in and ultimately as a value proposition by connecting those dots as an innovation hub, not just for startups, but also for growth companies, and not also just for technologies, but for projects, larger scale projects. So this innovation hub is really kind of on the forefront of where the insurance industry has been talking about going for the past 20 years, now seems to be poised and ready to do.
And so I will put the website link to the hub so people
Yep.
can find out more information. But is it funded by the insurers, or how is it funded?
Good question. So the Insurance Information Institute, they call themselves III.org, formed a initiative called the Resilience Accelerator. Some people think of accelerators being a physical location, but they formed the Resilience Accelerator as a means of helping the industry accelerate through this transformation. And then, of course, COVID comes along. So now you got a whole set of other types of losses and mitigations for communities and industries and individuals to, to deal with. So the Resilience Accelerator is the umbrella initiative of the Insurance Information Institute. And one of the pillars is this innovation hub, this innovation initiative. So some of the initial funding is a joint venture by Resilient H2O Partners, our organization, and the Institute. But we are also working with some of the larger insurers and non-insurers in the campaign, so to speak, of funding the different programs and different pieces of what the Innovation Hub and the Accelerator will do and already are doing. And then we've been in conversations with some of the federal agencies that look at the Resilient Accelerator and the Innovation Hub as an appropriate partner for them to engage with the industry, the insurance industry, and public sector government. But we also have started to hear from a number of foundations that look at this issue of resilience, social impact, and disaster mitigation as a combination as well.
That's great. That's great. Well, I will definitely put a link. I think what you're onto is important, because we can't continue to just respond and spend a lot of money on relief and response
Yep.
and not look at the underlying, things that we need to fix so we don't have to incur all of those costs. Is there anything else before we wrap up that you wanted to mention?
I would say that one of the things that I am a very strong proponent of is what I refer to as youth and student innovators. So a part of this deals with what we call inventathons, and that is to find ways to unleash youth and students who, think differently and look at how they can come up with solutions for their own communities, but also as entrepreneurs. But the other end of it is, obviously, it is hell to be poor. It is really hell to be poor and go through a disaster. So part of the other underlying initiative is to work with communities of color and diversity to help them become more mitigated, in addition to identifying investment opportunities. So it really is trying to be encompassing, but using the power of the insurance as economic capital, which is really a focus right now of that sector.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, thank you for taking a few minutes to speak with me today about what you're doing, and I wish you all the best with the hub.
Thank you for your attention and your interest. It's been great.